Story 1. The Christmas Eve Delivery. Marcus Chen had been driving long haul for Werner Enterprises for 12 years, and Christmas Eve runs were nothing new to him. At 43, he'd spent more holidays on the road than at home. His CB handle Night Owl known across every truck stop from Seattle to Miami. This particular December 24, 2019, he was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of specialty meats from a processing facility in rural Wisconsin to a high-end restaurant distributor in Chicago. The load was worth close to $200,000 and the delivery window was tight. They needed it before their Christmas Day prep began at 6 a.m. The snow had started falling around Madison, light at first, then building into something more substantial as he pushed north on Highway 151. His Kenworth W900's headlights cut through the white curtain, the wipers working overtime to keep the windshield clear. The CB crackled with chatter from other drivers, most of them complaining about the weather, swapping information about road conditions and closed rest stops. Marcus kept his speed steady at 55, well below his usual pace, but the roads were getting treacherous. Around 11 p.m., he passed through a small town called Ridgeway, population 800 according to the faded green sign. The main street was decorated with Christmas lights, though most of the houses were dark, families tucked in bed waiting for morning. His GPS showed another 40 miles to his next planned fuel stop, a Flying J just outside of Dodgeville. The fuel gauge read just over a quarter tank, cutting it close but manageable. That's when he noticed the car. It appeared in his side mirror first, a dark sedan that seemed to materialize from nowhere, riding his blind spot. Marcus checked his mirrors religiously. It was second nature after 12 years. And he was certain that stretch of highway had been empty just moments before. The car matched his speed exactly, staying perfectly parallel to his cab, never pulling ahead or falling behind. Through the falling snow, he couldn't make out the driver, just a dark silhouette behind the wheel. Probably just another traveler heading home for Christmas, he muttered to himself, adjusting his grip on the steering wheel. But something about the way the car maintained that exact position made his skin prickle. He tapped his brakes slightly, slowing down. The car slowed with him, maintaining the precise distance. He accelerated. The car accelerated, still perfectly aligned. Marcus grabbed his CB microphone. "Breaker, breaker, this is Night Owl heading southbound on a 151. Anyone else seeing this weird sedan out here?" Static answered him. He tried again, adjusting the channel. More static. That was odd. The CB had been working fine 20 minutes ago. He checked his phone. No signal. Not unusual in rural Wisconsin, but the timing felt wrong. The sedan suddenly swerved directly in front of him, forcing Marcus to hit his brakes hard. The trailer fishtailed slightly on the snowy road before the anti-lock system caught hold. His heart hammering, Marcus watched the car slow down, brake lights glowing red in the white chaos of the snowfall. Then it matched his reduced speed exactly, staying 15 feet ahead of his bumper. "What the hell are you doing?" Marcus shouted, though no one could hear him. He tried to change lanes to pass, but the car moved with him, blocking his path. Every time he attempted to get around it, the sedan shifted position, always staying directly ahead, always maintaining that exact 15-foot buffer. The snow was getting heavier now, reducing visibility to maybe 50 feet. Marcus's hands were sweating despite the cold. He'd driven through blizzards, black ice, and tornado warnings, but this felt different. This felt intentional, malicious. His headlights illuminated the sedan's license plate, but where there should have been numbers and letters, there was just a blank white rectangle. No state, no registration, nothing. That's when Marcus noticed the road itself was wrong. Highway 151 was a major state route, well-maintained, with clear lane markings and regular mile markers. But the road ahead looked older somehow. The pavement cracked and weathered. The yellow dividing line faded almost to invisibility. The The pine trees pressing in from both sides seemed taller, more oppressive, their snow-laden branches reaching toward the road like grasping fingers. He checked his GPS. The screen showed him exactly where he should be, a blue dot moving steadily along Highway 151 just 8 miles from Dodgeville. But what he was seeing through his windshield didn't match. This road was narrower, darker, older. The sedan's brake lights flashed 3 times in rapid succession, then it began to slow down. Marcus had no choice but to slow with it, the gap between them closing to 10 feet, then 5. He could see the driver now, or at least the back of their head. Something about the silhouette was off. The proportions weren't quite right, the head too large or the shoulders too narrow. The figure never turned, never acknowledged his presence, just sat perfectly still as the car continued its gradual deceleration. 20 miles per hour, 15, 10. Marcus's foot hovered over the brake pedal, his entire body tense. The Kenworth's engine rumbled, eager to move faster, the transmission protesting the slow speed. Through the falling snow, he could barely see beyond the sedan now, just swirling white and the vague shapes of trees. At 5 miles per hour, the sedan stopped completely. Marcus stopped too, leaving his engine running, the heater blasting against the December cold. He waited for something to happen, for the driver to get out, for the car to move, for anything. But it just sat there, exhaust pooling from its tailpipe mixing with the snow. 1 minute passed, then 2. Marcus grabbed his phone again, still no signal. The CB produced only that endless static. He was completely cut off, alone on this impossible version of Highway 151 with a car that shouldn't exist. The driver's door of the sedan opened. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as the figure stepped out. It was wearing what looked like a business suit, dark and formal, completely inappropriate for a Wisconsin snowstorm. The figure stood beside the car for a moment, facing away from him, then slowly turned around. Marcus's hands clenched the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. The figure had no face. Where there should have been eyes, nose, mouth, there was just smooth, pale skin like a mannequin that had never been finished. But somehow, impossibly, it was looking at him. He could feel its attention, its awareness pressing against him like a physical weight. The figure raised one hand and pointed directly at Marcus's trailer. Then it pointed to the side of the road. The meaning was clear. Stop here. Unload. No, Marcus whispered. No way. The figure lowered its hand and walked back to the sedan. It got in, closed the door, and the car began moving forward again slowly, deliberately. Marcus had no choice but to follow, his truck creeping along at walking speed, the snow building up on his windshield between wiper passes. They continued like this for what felt like hours but could only have been minutes. The trees pressed closer, the road narrower still. Marcus's fuel gauge was dropping faster than it should. He was down to 1/8 of a tank now, the low fuel warning light glowing amber on his dashboard. Then the sedan stopped again, this time pulling off to the side of the road. The faceless figure got out and walked into the trees, disappearing into the white darkness. The car remained, engine running, headlights cutting through the snow. Marcus sat frozen in his cab, his mind racing through options. He could try to reverse, but the road was too narrow and the trailer too long. He'd jackknife for sure. He could try to push past the sedan, but something told him that wouldn't work. That this thing, whatever it was, wouldn't allow it. He could wait, but his fuel was running dangerously low and the temperature outside was dropping into the single digits. His eyes fell on the CB radio, still producing that steady static. On impulse, he grabbed the microphone and spoke directly into it, not bothering with proper radio protocol. "I don't know what you want," he said, his voice shaking, "but I'm not stopping, I'm not unloading. This cargo has a destination and I'm going to deliver it." The static changed pitch, becoming almost like a voice, but not quite. Almost like words, but in a language that predated language. It made his teeth ache and his eyes water. Then the sedan's reverse lights came on. Marcus watched in horror as the car began backing toward him, not fast, but unstoppable. He threw his truck into reverse, but the trailer responded sluggishly on the snow-packed road. The sedan kept coming. 20 feet. 15. 10. At 5 feet, it stopped. The driver's door opened again and the faceless figure stepped out. This time it walked directly to Marcus's cab, moving through the snow with impossible grace, leaving no footprints. It stopped beside his door and raised its blank face toward him. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing's attention was overwhelming, like staring into the sun. Then it raised its hand and placed its palm flat against his window. The glass frosted over instantly, ice crystals blooming in intricate patterns that looked almost like writing. Marcus could read it somehow, though it wasn't in any language he knew. The road requires tribute. His trailer, it wanted his trailer. The $200,000 worth of specialty meats, the Christmas deliveries, the restaurant's entire holiday inventory. No, Marcus said again, but his voice had no strength. The figure pressed harder against the glass. The frost spread, creeping across the entire windshield now, coating his mirrors, covering the side windows. The temperature inside the cab began to plummet despite the heater running full blast. Marcus could see his breath, could feel ice forming in his beard. His fingers were going numb, his feet too. The cold was supernatural, invasive, seeping into his bones. In minutes, he'd be hypothermic. In an hour, he'd be dead. "Okay," he gasped. "Okay, take it." The pressure released immediately. The frost receded, revealing the figure still standing beside his door. It stepped back and gestured toward the road ahead. Marcus understood. Unhitch the trailer. Leave it here. Continue on. With shaking hands, he put on his heavy coat and work gloves. He climbed down from the cab, his boots crunching in the snow. The faceless figure watched as he worked the landing gear, lowering the trailer's front legs. It watched as he disconnected the air lines and the electrical connection. It watched as he pulled the release pin and separated the fifth wheel. The whole process took maybe 5 minutes. When Marcus climbed back into his cab, the trailer sat abandoned on the side of the impossible road, and the figure had returned to its sedan. The car began moving forward. Marcus followed, his cab feeling eerily light without the trailer's weight. They drove for another 10 minutes in that crawling procession, and then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the sedan was gone. One moment it was there, and the next, Marcus was alone on Highway 151, the road normal again, the lane markings clear. A green mile marker sign indicating Dodgeville was 6 miles ahead. His CB crackled to life with normal chatter. His phone showed 3 bars of signal. His GPS matched the road he was seeing. Marcus pulled over at the Flying J and sat in the parking lot for an hour, shaking, trying to process what had happened. Eventually, he called his dispatcher, reported the trailer stolen, gave a location he knew was wrong. The police found it 3 days later, exactly where he'd described unhitching it, on a normal stretch of Highway 151, completely empty. Every single box of meat was gone. Marcus still drives for Werner, but he never takes Christmas Eve runs anymore. And sometimes, late at night on empty highways, he sees a dark sedan in his mirrors, always maintaining that perfect distance, never quite catching up. He doesn't slow down when he sees it. He doesn't stop. He just drives faster and prays it doesn't decide to pull ahead. Because the road requires tribute, and next time, it might want more than cargo. Story 2. The Thanksgiving Detour. Sarah Mitchell had been driving rideshare for Uber in Portland, Oregon for 3 years, when she took the request that changed everything. It was Thanksgiving night 2021 around 10:30 p.m. and most of her fellow drivers had called it quits for the evening, heading home to their families and leftover turkey. Sarah was 28, single, and frankly preferred the surge pricing of holiday nights to awkward dinners with her parents in Beaverton. Her Honda Civic had just passed the 200,000-mile mark, but it ran smooth, and she knew Portland's streets like the back of her hand. The pickup request came through on her app. Collect passenger at Northwest 23rd Avenue and Lovejoy Street, destination listed as Timberline Lodge, Mount Hood. Sarah almost declined. That was a 90-minute drive into the mountains, and at this hour on Thanksgiving it seemed sketchy. But the fare estimate showed over $200 and the passenger rating was 5 stars, with over 300 trips completed. She accepted. The passenger was waiting outside a closed boutique, a woman who appeared to be in her 60s wearing an elegant wool coat and carrying a single leather overnight bag. She had silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of posture that suggested decades of private school or ballet training. "Thank you so much for accepting this ride," the woman said as she settled into the back seat, her voice cultured and warm. "I know it's late, and quite a drive. My name is Eleanor." "No problem at all," Sarah replied, pulling away from the curb. "Sarah, I'm surprised anyone's heading up to Timberline this late on Thanksgiving." "I have family there," Eleanor explained. "We're meeting for a very old tradition. I apologize for the late hour, but it couldn't be helped." They made small talk as Sarah navigated through the quiet Portland streets toward Highway 26, the route that would take them east into the mountains. Eleanor was pleasant company, asking about Sarah's life, her plans, sharing stories about her own youth in Portland when the city was much smaller. She had one of those voices that made you want to keep listening, measured and melodic. About 20 minutes into the drive, as they passed through the suburbs of Gresham, Eleanor leaned forward, slightly. "Sarah, I need to ask you to take a different route than your GPS suggests. There's a road that branches off just past Sandy. Old Salmon Road. It's not on most modern maps, but it cuts 30 minutes off the drive time." Sarah glanced at her rearview mirror, meeting Eleanor's eyes. "I'm not familiar with that road. Are you sure it's safe in this weather?" Light snow had begun to fall, nothing serious yet, but Mount Hood weather could turn dangerous fast. "I've driven it dozens of times," Eleanor assured her. "It's perfectly maintained. I'll guide you." Against her better judgment, something about Eleanor's confidence was persuasive. Sarah agreed. They continued on Highway 26, passing through the small town of Sandy with its darkened storefronts and Christmas decorations swaying in the wind. About 2 miles past town, Eleanor directed her to turn left onto a narrow road that Sarah had never noticed before, despite driving this route to Mount Hood at least a dozen times for various passengers. The road was paved but old, the kind of 2-lane highway that probably dated back to the 1950s or earlier. Tall Douglas firs pressed in from both sides, their branches heavy with snow. Sarah's headlights seemed to be absorbed by the darkness rather than cutting through it, providing maybe 40 feet of visibility. "This is quite remote," Sarah commented, her hands tightening on the steering wheel. The Honda's tires were good but not great, and the road was accumulating snow faster than she liked. "We'll rejoin the main highway soon," Eleanor said from the back seat, but her voice had changed subtly, still pleasant but with an edge Sarah couldn't quite identify. "Just keep following this road." They drove for 10 minutes, then 20. The trees seemed to be getting taller, older, their trunks massive enough that Sarah's headlights couldn't find their far edges. The snow was falling harder now, building up on the windshield between wiper passes. Her GPS had lost signal entirely, the screen showing just a gray void with a blue dot in the center. Her car, apparently floating in digital nothingness. "Eleanor, I think we should turn back," Sarah said. "This doesn't feel right." "We're almost there," Eleanor replied. "Just a bit further." Sarah checked her rearview mirror and felt her stomach drop. Eleanor's reflection was wrong. The woman was still sitting in the back seat, still wearing that elegant wool coat, but her face had changed. The features were sharper, older, almost skeletal. And her eyes, they reflected the dashboard lights like an animal's eyes, throwing back that green-gold shine. Sarah blinked hard and looked again. Eleanor looked normal again, pleasant and grandmotherly, offering her a reassuring smile. "You look pale, dear. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," Sarah lied. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. The road ahead was no longer a road, not really. The pavement had given way to hard-packed dirt and then to something that looked older still. Cobblestones, maybe. Or just bare rock worn smooth by centuries of use. The trees were enormous now, their branches meeting overhead to form a tunnel of ancient wood and shadow. Sarah's phone was completely dead despite being fully charged when they started. Her car's radio produced only static. The heating system seemed to be working, she could hear the fan. But the temperature inside the car was dropping steadily. She could see her breath. "Where are we really going?" Sarah demanded, pressing harder on the brake pedal, slowing the Honda to a crawl. Eleanor leaned forward, and this time when Sarah looked in the mirror, the old woman's true face didn't disappear. Sharp and terrible and ancient beyond measure, with eyes that held something like hunger. "To the crossing," Eleanor said, her voice no longer warm but cold as the November air. "We need a driver. We always need a driver. The road requires someone to ferry us across." "Across what?" Sarah's voice was shaking now, her foot hovering over the brake, ready to stop completely. "Between then and now. Between the world you know and the world beneath. Tonight is Thanksgiving, when the harvest is gathered and the old debts are paid. You accepted my request, you took my fare, now you must complete the journey." Sarah slammed on the brakes. The Honda skidded slightly on the snow-covered stone, then stopped. She threw the car into park and turned around to face her passenger directly, not through the mirror. Eleanor, or the thing wearing Eleanor's shape, smiled with too many teeth. "You can't refuse now," it said. "Look." Sarah looked through the windshield and her heart nearly stopped. The road ahead was lined with people, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, standing in the swirling snow. They were dressed in clothing from different eras. Colonial dresses and tricorn hats, Depression-era suits, 1970s bell-bottoms, modern jeans and hoodies. All of them were motionless, watching the car with empty eyes. "They're all drivers," Eleanor explained, her voice almost gentle now. "They all accepted the request. They all brought someone to the crossing, and they stayed. Because that's what the road requires on Thanksgiving night. Passage and a keeper to ensure safe passage for the next year." Sarah's hand found the door handle. She pulled it. The door didn't open. She pulled again, harder. Nothing. The locks were up, but the door refused to budge, as if sealed by something stronger than steel. "Don't be afraid," Eleanor said. "It's an honor, really. You'll be the guardian. You'll keep the crossing safe. You'll ensure that others can pass between the worlds when the time is right." "I don't want this," Sarah whispered. "No one ever does. But the crossing must be maintained. Without it, things would slip through that shouldn't. Things that would make your worst nightmares seem pleasant. You're not being punished, Sarah. You're being selected, chosen." The figures outside began to move, walking slowly toward the car, their footsteps silent in the snow. Sarah tried to start the engine. It was still running, but when she shifted into reverse, the wheels spun uselessly. She shifted to drive. Same result. The Honda was stuck, held in place by something that had nothing to do with snow or traction. Eleanor's hand appeared on Sarah's shoulder, cold as ice, even through her jacket. Last year, it was a man named Thomas. He drove for Lyft. Before him, a taxi driver named Maria. Before her, a truck driver named James. Every Thanksgiving, someone brings us across and someone stays. It's been this way for longer than your country has existed. Longer than the name Thanksgiving has been spoken. The figures were surrounding the car now, pressing close to the windows. Their faces, some decades dead, others centuries, peering in with expressions that mixed sadness and acceptance. "What happens if I refuse?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "You can't refuse. You're already here. The road has you." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I have a life. I have friends. People who'll miss me." "They'll forget," Eleanor said softly. "They always do. The road takes care of that. By tomorrow, your name will fade from their memories like morning mist. Your apartment will be rented to someone else. Your car will be found abandoned at a rest stop, explained away as a personal crisis, a sudden departure. The world closes around the absence easily." One of the figures, a young woman in a 1950s poodle skirt, placed her palm against Sarah's window. Her lips moved, forming words Sarah could somehow hear despite the glass. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but it gets easier. After the first century, you almost don't remember anymore." Sarah looked back at Eleanor, at that ancient thing in its elegant disguise. "Why tell me all this? Why not just take me?" "Because the crossing requires willing passage. On some level you must accept, you must choose to stay. That's what makes the magic work. That's what keeps the barriers strong. And if I don't choose?" Eleanor's smile faded. "Then the crossing fails. The barriers weaken and things slip through. Things that hunger. Things that should remain locked away from your world. How many people will die because you refused? How many families will face horrors worse than this because you chose yourself over them?" It was a trap, a perfect, terrible trap. Sarah could refuse and condemn strangers to whatever nightmares waited on the other side of the crossing. Or she could accept and lose everything, her life, her future, her very existence in the memories of everyone she'd ever known. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How long do I have to stay?" "1 year. Next Thanksgiving, you'll guide the next driver. You'll take Eleanor's place, and then you'll be free to join the Guardians." "Join them? I can't leave?" "The Guardians maintain the crossing from the outside. You'll stand by the road, you'll watch, you'll ensure safe passage. But you won't return to your old life. That's gone. That ends tonight." Sarah looked at all the faces pressed against her car windows. 100 years of drivers, maybe more, all trapped in this eternal Thanksgiving night, all bound to this impossible road. She thought about her mother, who she'd blown off for surge pricing, her best friend who'd invited her for dinner. The life she'd taken for granted, assumed would always be there. "I'll do it," she said finally. "But you have to promise me something." Eleanor tilted her head, curious. "What?" "Next year, when I'm the one in the back seat, I won't lie to the next driver. I'll tell them the truth from the start. I'll give them the choice before we're too far down the road to turn back." Eleanor considered this, her ancient eyes studying Sarah's face. "That's not how it's done." "Then that's my price. Truth for service. Or the crossing fails tonight and you can explain to whatever's waiting on the other side why you couldn't adapt to changing times." For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then slowly she nodded. "Agreed. For whatever good it will do. Most people don't believe the truth even when they hear it." Sarah opened her door. It swung freely now and stepped out into the snow. The figures made room for her, parting like water. She walked to where Eleanor now stood, having exited from the back seat. "What do I do?" Sarah asked. "You drive," Eleanor said simply. "You take the passenger across the crossing. You deliver them safely to the other side, and then you return here and you wait for next year." Eleanor climbed into the back seat of the Honda. Sarah got behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, stronger than it had ever sounded. The road ahead, which had seemed to end in darkness and trees, now extended forward, glowing faintly with a light that came from no source Sarah could identify. She put the car in drive and began moving forward. The guardians watched her pass, their faces solemn. As she drove deeper into the light, she could see the crossing itself, a place where reality seemed to fold, where multiple roads existed simultaneously in the same space, where the barriers between worlds were thin as spider silk. She drove Eleanor across, following instincts she didn't know she had, navigating paths that existed only partially in any single dimension. On the other side, and she couldn't have explained what other side meant, she stopped. Eleanor got out. "Thank you, Sarah. Next year, remember your promise?" "I will," Sarah said. And she knew with terrible certainty that she would, that she'd have nothing but time to remember. She drove back through the crossing, back to where the guardians waited. She parked the Honda in a space that seemed designated for it, though she couldn't have said why. She got out and joined the others by the side of the road. The Honda sat there, engine idling, waiting. The road remained, ancient and patient, and Sarah stood with the other guardians watching, waiting for the next Thanksgiving night, when she would take her turn in the back seat and guide the next driver to the crossing. Her phone had one last message notification, which she saw before it faded. "Where are you? You missed dinner. Mom's worried." But even as she read it, she could feel the words losing meaning, the connections severing, the world forgetting she existed. By morning, her name would be gone from contact lists. Her apartment would be empty, and in Portland, life would continue as if Sarah Mitchell had never existed at all. Except for one night a year when she rides in the back seat of a stranger's car and guides them to the crossing between worlds, and offers them a choice that isn't really a choice at all. The road requires a driver. The crossing must be maintained. And Thanksgiving always comes around again. Story 3. The New Year's Passenger. Detective Raymond Okafor had worked for the Chicago Transit Authority Police Department for 16 years, the last 8 of them on the night shift patrolling the Red Line. At 42, he'd seen everything the CTA had to offer: robberies, assaults, overdoses, jumpers, and the particular brand of chaos that came with drunk New Year's Eve revelers. This particular December 31st, 2020 was different only in scale. The pandemic had gutted normal celebrations, leaving the trains eerily empty even on a night that usually saw maximum capacity crowds. Raymond stood on the platform at the Belmont station around 11:15 p.m., watching the sparse passengers shuffle on and off the northbound train. Most wore masks, though a few defiant souls kept their faces bare. He was about to head back to his patrol car when dispatch crackled in his radio. "Unit 7, we need you to board the next southbound train at Belmont. Conductor reports a passenger in the last car refusing to disembark at end of line. Multiple trips. Possible psychiatric issue or substance problem. Can you assess and assist?" Raymond keyed his radio. "Copy that, dispatch. I'll board the next southbound." The train arrived 6 minutes later. Raymond walked through the cars, which were mostly empty, until he reached the last one. There, in the far corner seat, sat a man in a formal black suit that looked at least 70 years old. Fedora pulled low over his face. He was motionless, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead. Raymond approached slowly, his hand resting on his radio, not his service weapon. He tried to de-escalate whenever possible. "Evening, sir. I'm Detective Okafor with the CTA police. I need to speak with you." The man didn't move. didn't acknowledge Raymond's presence at all. "Sir, I'm told you've been riding this train for several hours without disembarking. Are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" Still nothing. Raymond got closer, studying the man's profile beneath the fedora's brim. His skin was pale, waxy almost, and Raymond couldn't tell if he was breathing. For a moment, he worried he was looking at a corpse. Then the man's head turned slowly, mechanically, until he was facing Raymond directly. His eyes were completely black, not the iris, but the entire eye, including where the white should be. They reflected the train car's fluorescent lighting like dark mirrors. "Detective Okafor," the man said, his voice flat and echoing strangely in the empty car. "You're exactly on time. Please sit." Raymond's training screamed at him to call for backup, but his curiosity, the same curiosity that had made him a good detective, won out. He sat across from the man, keeping the aisle between them, his hand still on his radio. "You know my name," Raymond said carefully. "I know many things," the man replied. "I know you're divorced. I know your daughter Amber is 12 and spending tonight with your ex-wife in Schaumburg. I know you volunteered for this shift because empty trains are preferable to empty apartments on New Year's Eve." Raymond's jaw tightened. "That information isn't hard to find. You could have looked me up." "I know you were supposed to work the day shift tomorrow," the man continued, "but you'll call in sick because something will happen tonight that changes everything. I know you'll never work for the CTA again after this night, and I know you're going to help me because you're a good man who keeps his promises." "I haven't promised you anything." The man reached into his suit jacket. Raymond's hand moved to his weapon but stopped when the man produced only a pocket watch. He opened it, showing Raymond the face. The watch hands were spinning backwards, counterclockwise, moving faster and faster until they became a blur. "In 43 minutes, the man said, "it will be midnight. The year 2020 will become 2021. The old will make way for the new. And I will finally be able to rest. But I need a witness. I need someone to confirm it happened. Otherwise, I'll be trapped for another year." "Trapped doing what?" Raymond asked, his detective instincts engaging despite the impossibility of the situation. "Riding this train, the southbound Red Line, every night from 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. The same route, the same stops, over and over and over. I've been doing this for 92 years, detective. Since January 1st, 1929, when the original State Street subway opened." Raymond knew CTA history. The Red Line had predecessors, older transit systems that had been absorbed and rebuilt over decades. "The State Street subway opened in 1943, he corrected, not 1929. The man smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. "The official subway, yes, but there were tunnels before that. Private tunnels, experimental routes, built by men who understood that cities need more than surface transportation. They need vessels to carry things through." "Through what?" "Time," the man said simply. "The old year to the new, the dead to the forgotten, the past to wherever the past goes when people stop remembering it." The train was moving now, heading south toward the loop. Raymond realized he hadn't heard the doors close, hadn't heard the conductor's announcements. The platform at Belmont had simply vanished, replaced by tunnel darkness pressing against the windows. "Who are you?" Raymond demanded. "I was Jacob Moretti. I was a conductor for the private transit system that existed before your CTA. On New Year's Eve, 1928, I was offered a job, a special route, premium pay. All I had to do was drive one train, one route from 11 p.m. until 3 a.m., carrying passengers from the old year into the new. I accepted. I took the money. And at midnight, when 1929 began, I realized I couldn't stop, couldn't get off. The train became my prison, and I became its conductor, its guardian, its eternal passenger." Raymond's radio crackled with static. He tried to respond to dispatch but got only interference. His phone showed no signal, and the time displayed was wrong. It read 11:47 p.m., but his watch showed only 11:23. Time was moving differently down here, in these tunnels that shouldn't exist. Every year, Jacob continued, I ride this route, carrying passengers who don't belong in either year. The ones who got stuck between, the ones who died just before midnight or were born just after. The ones whose existence straddles the transition. I ferry them through the change, ensure they end up where they belong, and then I start again the next night. That's impossible, Raymond said, but his voice lacked conviction. Look around, detective. Raymond did. The train car was no longer empty. The seats were filled with people, men, women, children, all dressed in clothing from different eras. Some wore flapper dresses and spats. Others wore polyester suits from the 1970s. Still others wore modern clothing, though faded and torn. All of them sat perfectly still, their eyes closed, their faces peaceful. They're sleeping, Jacob explained. Suspended between midnight and 12:01, between 2020 and 2021. They'll wake up when they reach their destination, but they won't remember this journey. They'll just suddenly be there, in whatever year they belong to. Raymond's hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? I want to be free. 92 years is enough. I've earned my rest, but the route needs a witness, someone who acknowledges what happened, who confirms the transition was made safely, who can testify that the old conductor fulfilled his duty. That's why you're here. That's why dispatch called you to this exact train at this exact time. The route knows when it needs someone new. New? The word came out as barely a whisper. Jacob's black eyes fixed on Raymond's face. I need you to witness midnight, to see these passengers safely transition from 2020 to 2021. And then I need you to promise that you'll remember, that you'll carry the knowledge of what happened here, that's all. Just remember. Just be a witness to the impossible. And if I refuse, then I ride another year, and these passengers stay trapped, and the debt accumulates. Eventually, the route will fail entirely, and everything that should have transitioned smoothly will rupture through violently. You don't want to know what that looks like. The train was passing through stations now, but they were wrong. Raymond glimpsed platforms that weren't part of the modern Red Line, older stations with different names, different architecture. He saw people waiting on these phantom platforms dressed in clothing from eras long past, their faces patient and resigned. At one station, the sign read Adams Street, but not in modern CTA style. A woman in a Victorian dress boarded the train. She didn't acknowledge Raymond or Jacob, just found an empty seat and closed her eyes, joining the other sleeping passengers. She died on New Year's Eve, 1887, Jacob said quietly. But her death wasn't recorded until January 1st, 1888, so she belongs to neither year entirely. She rides until we can find where she fits. Most years we manage it. Some passengers have been riding longer than I've been conductor. Raymond checked his watch. 11:53. 7 minutes until midnight. The train was moving faster now, the tunnel walls blurring, the stations passing too quickly to read their names. What happens at midnight? Raymond asked. The transition. The route will fold, carrying everyone from 2020 into 2021. I'll make sure each passenger ends up where they belong. Most will simply wake up in their lives a few hours later, missing only the memory of how they got there. A few will need special placement. And then, if you've witnessed it, if you promise to remember, I'll be free. Free to go where? Jacob smiled, but it was a sad expression. Wherever conductors go when their route finally ends. I don't know. I hope it's better than this. The train was shaking now, vibrating with energy that had nothing to do with its motors or wheels. The lights flickered. The sleeping passengers stirred slightly but didn't wake. Raymond could feel pressure building, like the air before a thunderstorm. 10 seconds, Jacob said, watching his spinning pocket watch. 9, 8, 7. Raymond made his decision. "I promise," he said. "I'll remember. I'll bear witness. I'll carry the knowledge that this happened, that you were here, that these people were saved." Jacob nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you, Detective, thank you." 3, 2, 1. Midnight. The train exploded with light, not painful but overwhelming, like staring at the sun through closed eyelids. Raymond felt the world lurch, felt time itself shifting, bending, folding like paper. He saw the passengers simultaneously in the train car and scattered throughout Chicago, in apartments, on streets, and hospitals, all of them arriving exactly where they needed to be. Their missing hours explained away by drunkenness or sleepiness or simple confusion. He saw Jacob Moretti standing on a platform that existed in no particular time, removing his fedora, looking younger somehow, the black in his eyes fading to a normal brown. The old conductor smiled one last time, tipped his hat to Raymond, and then simply wasn't. The train lurched to a stop. Raymond was at the Roosevelt station, the platform showing the normal modern CTA signage. The date displays read January 1st, 2021, 12:04 a.m. The train car was empty except for him. His radio crackled with normal dispatch chatter. His phone showed full signal. Everything was back to normal, as if the last hour had been a dream. But Raymond knew it wasn't. He could remember every detail: Jacob's black eyes, the sleeping passengers, the phantom stations, the impossible journey through time's thin membrane. He carried the memory like a weight, a promise fulfilled. He called in, reported the car empty, ended his shift early. He went home to his empty apartment and sat by his window, watching fireworks explode over the Chicago skyline, welcoming 2021. Raymond didn't call in sick the next day, but he did put in his resignation 2 weeks later. The CTA accepted it without question. 16 years was a good run, they said. He got a job with a private security firm, something that kept him firmly on the ground, away from trains and tunnels and routes that shouldn't exist. But every New Year's Eve since 2020, Raymond finds himself on the Red Line around 11 p.m. riding the southbound route, watching the passengers, waiting to see if anyone needs help, waiting to see if another conductor will appear, trapped and desperate for a witness. So far, the trains have been normal, but Raymond keeps his promise. He remembers, he watches, and he knows that somewhere in Chicago's vast transit network, there are still routes that exist between seconds, tunnels that carry more than passengers, and conductors who serve time itself rather than the CTA. He's never seen Jacob Moretti again, but sometimes, just sometimes, when a train passes through a station too quickly to stop, Raymond catches a glimpse of a man in an old fedora sitting in the last car, his eyes closed, finally sleeping after 92 years of eternal midnight. The route was witnessed, the promise was kept, and the New Year's passengers found their way home. Story 4. The 4th of July route. Vanessa Park had been a pilot for Mesa Airlines, flying regional routes as a contractor for United for 7 years when she got the assignment that should have been routine. July 4th, 2018, Independence Day, typically a busy flying day, but this was a late-night cargo run, not passengers. Mesa occasionally did freight contracts to supplement passenger revenue, and this one was straightforward. Fly a Bombardier CRJ-200 from Denver International Airport to a small regional airport outside of Casper, Wyoming, carrying medical supplies for a rural hospital network. Solo pilot, no co-pilot needed for the short hop. Wheels up at 11 p.m., estimated arrival 12:30 a.m. At 31, Vanessa had logged over 4,000 flight hours and held every rating she needed. She was comfortable with night flying, comfortable with cargo, comfortable with solo operations. The CRJ-200 was her favorite aircraft, reliable, responsive, and forgiving of pilot error. She'd flown this exact Denver to Casper route probably 50 times. The pre-flight checks went perfectly. The cargo, pallets of medical supplies secured in the cabin where seats would normally be, was properly loaded and balanced. Weather was clear, winds calm, visibility unlimited. The July night was warm and calm, fireworks still popping sporadically across Denver's suburbs as she taxied to the runway. Tower cleared her for takeoff at 11:08 p.m. Vanessa pushed the throttles forward, felt the CRJ's engines respond with their familiar surge of power, and lifted off into the Colorado night. The lights of Denver fell away behind her as she climbed to her cruising altitude of 28,000 feet, heading north-northeast toward Wyoming. The first 15 minutes were perfectly normal. She contacted Denver Center, reported her altitude and heading, received confirmation of her flight plan. The autopilot was engaged, the engines humming smoothly, all systems showing green. She settled in for what should have been a boring 90-minute flight. At 11:26 p.m., her instruments went insane. Every gauge spun simultaneously. Airspeed, altitude, heading, vertical speed. Her GPS lost signal. Her navigation displays went dark. Her radios produced only static. Vanessa immediately disengaged the autopilot and took manual control, trusting her inner ear and the view through her windscreen more than her instruments. Except the view through her windscreen was wrong. She should have been flying over the dark landscape of northeastern Colorado, maybe seeing the lights of Fort Collins or Cheyenne in the distance. Instead, she saw nothing but blackness. Not clouds, not night, but absolute void, like flying through the emptiest part of space. No stars, no ground lights, no horizon line, just infinite black in every direction. Vanessa's training kicked in. Spatial disorientation was a killer. She'd lost classmates to it. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to trust her instruments even though they were haywire, to maintain level flight through feel alone. The CRJ was still responding to her inputs, still flying, even if she had no idea where she was going. Denver Center, November 7-4, Charlie Papa. I have complete instrument failure and have lost visual reference. Request immediate assistance. She tried every frequency. Only static answered. Then she saw the lights. They appeared ahead of her in the void, a perfect line of red lights, stretching vertically from infinitely below to infinitely above, like a dotted line drawn through the universe. As she flew closer, she realized they were fireworks, massive fireworks, each explosion the size of a city block, detonating in sequence, creating that vertical line. But fireworks needed air, needed gravity. These explosions were happening in vacuum, in impossibility, burning with colors that hurt to look at. Vanessa banked right, trying to avoid the line of explosions. Her turn was smooth. The CRJ handled normally, responding to her control inputs like always. But no matter how hard she turned, the line of fireworks stayed directly ahead, as if she and it were locked together in some fixed relationship. She tried banking left. Same result. The line stayed ahead, unavoidable. "Okay," she said aloud, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Okay. If I can't go around, I go through." She leveled the aircraft, set her heading directly toward the line of explosions, and pushed the throttles forward. The CRJ accelerated, closing the distance. The fireworks grew larger, their explosions more detailed. She could see they weren't normal pyrotechnics. Each burst was filled with images like photographs burning in fire. She saw faces, buildings, moments frozen in time and then consumed. At the last second before impact, Vanessa closed her eyes. The CRJ passed through the line without a bump, without a sound. When she opened her eyes, her instruments had returned to normal, all of them showing reasonable readings simultaneously. GPS had a lock. Radios were clear. She was at 28,000 feet, heading north-northeast, exactly where she should be. Except her clock was wrong. It showed 11:47 p.m. She'd lost 21 minutes somehow, time that had passed on her instruments but not in her memory. November 7-4 Charlie Papa, Denver Center, we show you off course. Confirm your position. Vanessa nearly sobbed with relief at hearing another human voice. Denver Center, 7-4 Charlie Papa, I had complete instrument failure, now resolved. Request vectors to Casper Regional. 7-4 Charlie Papa, we show no record of instrument failure reported. Your transponder has been solid throughout. Vectoring you to Casper, turn left heading 350. No record of failure, but her instruments had gone dark. She'd called it in, hadn't she? Vanessa's hands were shaking on the yoke. She followed the vectors, turning toward Casper, trying to process what had happened. Hallucination? Hypoxia? Some kind of spatial disorientation worse than she'd ever experienced? Then she noticed the cargo. She'd loaded 4 pallets of medical supplies in Denver. She could see them through the open cockpit door. Or rather, she could see 3 pallets. The 4th was missing. The tie-down straps were still attached to the floor, still secured, but the pallet they'd been holding had vanished. Vanessa's mouth went dry. Cargo couldn't just disappear. The cabin was pressurized, sealed. The door hadn't opened. Every alarm on the aircraft would have screamed if it had. But the pallet was gone. Roughly 800 pounds of medical supplies just absent. She continued to Casper, landed smoothly despite her shaking hands, and taxied to the cargo area. Ground crew met her, 2 men in Mesa Airlines contractor uniforms, both looking confused when she opened the cargo door. "You're light," one of them said, checking his clipboard. "We're supposed to receive 4 pallets. You've only got 3. "I loaded 4 in Denver," Vanessa insisted. "It was there when I took off." The ground crew exchanged glances. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you've only got 3 pallets, and our weight and balance sheet from Denver shows you loaded 3 pallets. Says right here, 3 pallets, total weight 2,400 pounds. Vanessa grabbed the sheet from his hands. It did say 3 pallets. It had her signature at the bottom, confirming she'd verified the load before departure. But she remembered 4 pallets. She distinctly remembered 4. "There's something else weird," the second ground crew member said. "Your arrival time. We were expecting you at 12:30 a.m. on July 5th, but you landed at 12:03 a.m., still July 4th. You made incredible time." Vanessa checked her watch, then the aircraft clock, then her phone. They all agreed. 12:03 a.m. July 4th. But that was impossible. She'd taken off at 11:08 p.m. The flight should have been 90 minutes. Even if she'd had a massive tailwind, she'd still arrive after midnight, after the date change. Unless she'd lost more than 21 minutes. Unless she'd lost time going into that impossible void and gained it back coming out. She filed her post-flight report citing instrument anomalies without details and drove to her hotel in Casper. She lay awake until sunrise, reviewing everything that had happened, trying to make it make sense. She couldn't. The next morning, Mesa Airlines called. They wanted her to come to the Denver hub for a meeting. When she arrived 2 days later, after a normal, boring commercial flight back, she was ushered into a conference room with the chief pilot and a man in a dark suit who introduced himself only as Mr. Reeves. "Ms. Park," Reeves said, his voice carefully neutral. "We need to ask you about your July 4th cargo flight." Vanessa's heart hammered. "What about it?" "You experienced an anomaly, a deviation from normal flight parameters. We have some questions." "My instruments failed," Vanessa said carefully. "I reported it to Denver Center. They seem to have no record, but it happened." Reeves opened a folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed a pallet of medical supplies, her missing fourth pallet, sitting in an empty field. Vanessa could see sagebrush and rocky soil in the background. This pallet was found 40 miles north of Fort Collins, Reeves explained. In the middle of nowhere, no roads within 5 miles, no explanation for how it got there. But the cargo manifest numbers match your Denver load. The supplies are still sealed, still intact. They just appeared there sometime around 11:30 p.m. on July 4th. Vanessa stared at the photo. That's impossible. Yes, Reeves agreed. It is. But it happened. And this isn't the first time. He slid more photos across the table. Different aircraft, different pilots, different cargo. But always the same story. July 4th flights, late at night, cargo disappearing from secured aircraft and reappearing in remote locations. Sometimes the pilots reported instrument failures. Sometimes they reported lost time. All of them reported passing through something they couldn't explain. "What is it?" Vanessa asked. "What's happening on July 4th?" Reeves leaned back in his chair. "We don't know exactly, but we have theories. Independence Day. The moment the country declared independence, when we severed ties with Britain and became something new. A threshold moment. A transition point in history. We think somehow that transition left a mark. A scar in reality maybe, or a fold in time. And every July 4th, especially around midnight, the moment the 4th becomes the 5th, that scar opens slightly." "That's insane," Vanessa said. "You flew through it," Reeves countered. "You saw something. You lost cargo. You gained time. Are you saying it didn't happen?" Vanessa couldn't answer that. It had happened. She knew it had happened. "We track these incidents," Reeves continued. "We try to understand them, and we need pilots who've experienced them to report everything they remember, every detail. Because these anomalies are getting more frequent and we need to know why." "Who are you?" Vanessa demanded. "You're not with Mesa Airlines." "I work for an organization that monitors aviation anomalies. We coordinate with the FAA, with airlines, with military aviation. Our job is to ensure these incidents don't become public, don't cause panic, and don't endanger more people than necessary." "Than necessary? Are you saying people have died?" Reeves's expression darkened. 2 aircraft have disappeared completely on July 4th flights in the last 30 years. Small private planes, fortunately, not commercial jets. Both were flying solo at night. Both simply vanished from radar and were never found. We believe they entered the anomaly and couldn't find their way out. Vanessa felt sick. "What happened to my cargo? Why did one pallet disappear?" "We think the anomaly requires passage, a toll. Usually it takes time. Those 21 minutes you lost. But sometimes it takes physical objects. We haven't identified the pattern yet. You were lucky it only took cargo and not more." "More? Like what?" "Like the aircraft," Reeves said quietly. "Like you." Vanessa stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm done. I'm not flying July 4th routes anymore. I'll trade shifts, take vacation, whatever I need to do. I'm not going through that again." "That's fine," Reeves said. "In fact, we recommend it. Pilots who've experienced the anomaly once have a higher chance of experiencing it again. We track them, keep them off July 4th schedules when possible. But we need your full report. Everything you saw, everything you felt, every detail." Vanessa spent the next 2 hours describing the void, the line of fireworks, the images in the explosions, the lost time and missing cargo. Reeves took notes without comment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he closed his notebook and looked at her directly. "Thank you, Ms. Park. You handled the situation well. Most pilots panic when their instruments fail in an anomaly. You maintained control, got through it, and kept your aircraft safe. That takes skill and courage. I don't feel courageous, Vanessa admitted. I feel terrified. Good. Fear is appropriate, but you survived. That's what matters. Vanessa left the meeting, returned to her normal flight schedules, and tried to forget July 4th, 2018. Mostly she succeeded. Her career continued normally. She upgraded to captain 2 years later, transitioned to larger aircraft, built a life she was proud of. But every July 4th, she watches the schedules carefully. She makes sure she's never flying between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. She makes sure her routes keep her far from that stretch of sky between Denver and Casper. And on Independence Day, when fireworks explode across America, she thinks about that line of impossible fire burning through the void, filled with images of moments that mattered, transitions that changed everything. She wonders what her missing palette is doing out there in that empty field, whether it's still there, waiting, whether the medical supplies it contained ever reached patients who needed them, or if they're still sitting in the sagebrush, a permanent offering to whatever force guards the threshold of independence. And she wonders about those 2 planes that disappeared, those pilots who entered the void and never came back. Whether they're still flying through that darkness, still searching for a way home, or whether the anomaly kept them as its own, permanent residents of that space between what was and what came next, between colony and country, between dependence and independence. Vanessa never flies on July 4th anymore. She's learned that some declarations of independence come with a price, and some transitions demand more than we want to give. The void is patient. The fireworks still burn, and every year on the night America celebrates its freedom, the threshold opens again, waiting for the next pilot brave or unlucky enough to fly through the moment that changed everything.